You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the latest episode of Star Trek Prodigy called Let Sleeping Borg Lie. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel are Father Cory Sticha. Hey, Father Cory.
How's it going?
And Jimmy Akin. Hey, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Folks, be sure to like The Secrets of Star Trek on our Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Retweet us on Twitter, where we're at SQPN. We're also on Instagram at StarQuest Network. And be sure to leave us comments wherever you find us. We love to hear from you. Another show on the StarQuest Network you are sure to enjoy is The Secrets of Middle-earth. You can find that wherever fine podcasts are found or at SQPN.com/Middle-earth.
I thought you were going to say you can find it in the middle of the earth, but okay.
You can find it in, well, sort of on the edge of the, well, never mind. You'll know if you actually are if you listen to the podcast. And stick around to the end. We've got some listener feedback on a recent episode. But first, Jimmy, can you give us a recap of what happens in this episode?
Last time, the Diviner's weapon on the Protostar wrecked a communication space station, forcing the kids to flee. And biological Janeway found the Diviner in stasis on the mining colony Tars Lamora. This time, the kids find the weapon hidden aboard the Protostar, but they can't figure out a way to disarm it. They stumble across a Borg cube, and hearing of the Borg's ability to adapt to weapons and render them harmless, they think maybe the Borg know how to deactivate it. Over hologram Janeway's objections, they board the Borg cube and go searching for an answer. Zero, who has been a member of a hive mind before, plugs himself into the sleeping Borg collective, but he's overcome by them and is assimilated. The Borg start waking up, and the other kids are captured and on the verge of assimilation, but Gwyn appeals to Zero and is able to inspire him with the thought that resistance is not futile. Zero resists, breaks free of the collective, and puts the Borg temporarily back into their dormant state. However, he learned, or at least believes, that the Borg believe that the weapon on the Protostar cannot be deactivated or removed. So the kids decide they can't go to the Federation until they can do so safely. Meanwhile, biological Janeway finds the smashed-up comm station and concludes that Chakotay must not be in control of the Protostar. And in our parting shot, in biological Janeway's sickbay, the Diviner suddenly wakes up. The end.
Okay, so we have some interesting aspects, and we're bringing in the Borg again from the rest of Star Trek. I mean, pretty much TNG and the other ones. We start this episode
with Janeway here. You know, the Borg can't be far behind.
That's right, exactly. And maybe the Borg Queen even at some point. So we start the episode with them watching the holodeck recording of the Diviner revealing his plans, which, as I was watching, I was kind of saying to myself, I kind of wish they'd done this last episode, which would have helped me remember what was going on in the first half of the season. But, you know, it's nice to have it there anyway, and to kind of have this remembrance. And now everyone is on the same page. The whole crew knows what's going on. They know there's the secret weapon, and we don't have to drag that out, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So the interesting thing is the Holo Janeway can't believe she didn't know about the weapon in the computers, which I think was kind of a hard stretch for me, because she also didn't know about the Protostar drive.
Which they literally pointed out. It's like, you didn't know about this either. How do you expect you didn't know about this other part? You know, it's become clear that there's elements of the ship that have been deleted from her memory.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what else doesn't she know? You know, that's a big hanging question. And it's kind of interesting because we have this huge mystery that we really haven't. I mean, we're sort of getting to it, which is, how did the Diviner get a hold of the Protostar, and where did the crew go? And the kids don't seem to, and Holo Janeway don't seem to be all that concerned with those questions, which they're kids. So I suppose it wouldn't necessarily be foremost on their minds, but I think it's interesting.
And even though Holo Janeway is just an emergency hologram, you would think her programming in the event of her entire original crew being missing would trigger some kind of I need to help my original crew. Sorry, kids. I need to help my original crew now.
Right.
Well, and of course, part of that could be since the kids want to get to the Federation and, get back to Starfleet, that could be part of it too. The thing is, get this experimental, highly classified ship back to Starfleet, and then Starfleet can send a crew to find the missing crew.
It could be part of the emergency holograms programming, to recover or get in touch with Starfleet or that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So they end up finding it's basically a virus, right? It's a computer virus.
Yeah, but there's a physicalization to it. It's apparently infected their software, but there's also a giant dongle there.
It's a dongle virus, and it's in this subdeck under the bridge, which again, Holo Janeway had no knowledge of that this existed, but it could only be opened using a key made from Gwyn's interesting
heirloom
device. That's an element of the show that I kind of really like, is this device that she has that's technology from her people that can shape into whatever form she needs, in which case it's most often a weapon, but in this case it becomes a key, which is interesting.
It also becomes relevant later in the fight that they have with the Borg. I mean, it doesn't save them all, but they fire a phaser at the Borg and they get in their first shot for free, and the Borg falls over into an abyss. But then the Borg immediately adapt to the phasers, and being kids, they don't know about rotating the frequencies. So their phasers become immediately useless. But Gwyn's artifact is not just one shape. So it is going to be harder for them to adapt to.
That's true.
Well,
because it adapts back.
It's also a physical attack, which the Borg have always been immune, or have not been immune to. Getting pushed off a cliff, is going to kill a Borg regardless, if they've got their shields up or not.
Gravity is always a good weapon against the Borg. So, and speaking of the Borg, that's when they kind of stumble upon this Borg cube that's non-operational for whatever reason.
Yeah, they said a neurolytic pathogen had shut it down.
Right.
And I was wondering, is this the artifact from the Picard series, 18 years in the future?
So, now Memory Alpha, they proposed that this is actually from future Janeway at Endgame, in the episode Endgame, because she uses a neurolytic pathogen to infect the Borg Queen so Voyager can escape and get back to Earth.
Maybe that's also how we got the artifact.
Yeah.
Right. Interesting. Right. It would be interesting if they drew those connections between Prodigy and Picard. That would be an interesting connection between kids animated, same thing, kids and putting some important element to Picard in there. So the kids are obviously not scared of it because they don't recognize it.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Janeway is scared. Yeah.
Yeah. Kids, you're making a big mistake here. You should listen to Holo Janeway on this. But they're kids and they've never encountered the Borg before. They have no idea how dangerous they are.
I love Jacob Pog when he gets on there and he's an engineer's dream, It's like, this stuff, this is so great. And then he's standing right below the Borg going, whoops.
And they get this idea in their heads that they can use Borg tech to disarm the Diviner's weapon. And why do they think all of a sudden the Borg would be the solution that they would know? Only because they collect technology?
Well, because they adapt to weaponry and make it useless. And so what I thought at first they were going to do is expose the Borg to the weapon and let them adapt. But they didn't end up going that way. They're presumably trying to tap into knowledge of how to neutralize weaponry that the Borg already have. Okay.
It would be interesting to infect the Borg with this weapon and have them destroy all of the Borg. Cube, the whole Borg collective. So meanwhile, on Admiral Janeway's ship, biological Janeway, they've got the diviner. They don't know who he is or how dangerous he is even.
I love how he's babbling, even though he's unconscious. He's babbling about, I've got to save them, and they've taken my daughter. And he's giving, even though he's the villain, he's saying the stuff that will push all the right Federation buttons.
Right. And so we have Janeway, we have an ensign, Essentia, played by Jamila Jamal,
who does not sound like her in this role.
Yeah.
I mean, she does not sound like Tahani.
Yeah, from The Good Place. Yeah. And which maybe mean good actress. We also have the ship's doctor is Dr. Noam, who is a Tellarite, very grumpy.
Played by Jason Alexander.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Also doesn't sound like him.
Doesn't sound like him. Yeah. Big Star Trek fan, by the way. That's a long history with him in Star Trek.
He's been on Star Trek in several roles too. So
yes, he has.
Usually with makeup on, but yeah.
Yep. And so Janeway was famous. Like Picard was a tea drinker. Janeway was famously a coffee drinker, but now she's drinking tea. I thought that was a nice little touch. Her doctor making her drink tea.
I like when she's replicating it. She says tea black. and she's got the little pause in there. It's like, yeah, she doesn't say Earl Grey, and she says black, which is an actual kind of tea.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean tea black, or black tea does not mean the same thing that black coffee does. Black coffee means it has no sugar or cream in it. But black tea is a way of preparing the tea leaves so that they're in fact darker in color. And it's in contrast to green tea and white tea, which are other ways of preparing. The tea leaves are all the same, but you prepare them in different ways before brewing, and that results in them being designated either black, green, or white tea.
Now,
go
ahead.
I was just going to ask, is oolong the same as white tea? Because I've heard that oolong.
Oolong, well, I don't know that. I believe oolong is a different kind of leaf.
Okay.
But I could be mistaken.
Yeah. Now, if evil Picard in the series Picard drank coffee instead of tea, does that mean this is evil Janeway for drinking tea instead of coffee?
Well, as a coffee drinker, I think that's eminently sensible to take precautions there. So, and Ensign Essentia is smart and a butt kisser, as Dr. Noam points out. And so I thought that was a funny little observation. Having a grumpy doctor can be fun because he gets to say things that the audience might think, but no one else can say. So back to the Borg cube. Zero, like you mentioned, Zero thinks the only way to access what the Borg know is for him. I got in my head early that Zero was a her. To enter the collective somehow, and
on the theory that it's been in a hive mind before, because Medusans apparently have a hive mind, so it'll be easier for it to resist. On the other hand, that could be a two-edged sword, because maybe having a fierce sense of individual identity your whole life will make it easier to resist.
Right. Maybe being amenable to hive minds makes you more susceptible. So, while she's in there, while Zero's in there, Gwyn and the others, the others except Gwyn are captured. And so, like, Gwyn's running around trying to, and it's sort of, I mean, I guess it's part of the premise of the show that these are exceptional kids who are extremely lucky, but it sort of pushes the bounds of believability, that how easily they escape from the Borg compared to, almost every Starfleet crew.
Until they don't. You mean the overall escape? Yeah. But they don't end up escaping them initially. The one thing I wish they had done, now I liked how when Zero plugs into the collective voices identify him as species 802 Medusan.
Yep.
And I liked that. But when he says, my name is Zero to them, it's like, they should have said, this is an acceptable Borg dezigation.
Yeah.
His name is a number. Come on.
Right. That's true.
I am 0 of 1.
0 of 1. And then, and it's Zero's guilt over hurting Gwyn that hinders his ability to resist the Borg and to assimilate them.
Yeah, just for reference, he hurt Gwyn accidentally when he revealed his true form to thwart the diviner, and Gwyn saw a reflection of him in a surface and it damaged her memory. So he's been guilting out over that experience, even though it was completely unintentional on his part.
Right. And that's sort of a standard trope for kids programming, is this idea of dealing with hurts and guilt and pain and interpersonal problems like this. This has come up between, Gwyn and Dahl, for instance, in previous stories. So it's there. It doesn't last very long. By the end of the episode, they're pretty much good, I guess. And so go ahead.
One thing I noticed, when the Borg are waking up and coming out of their alcoves, they are moving much more naturally than they did on TV. It's like they just used Borg skins in the animation engine, but these are walking as fluidly as the other characters, whereas in TV, the actors would always dial back their fluidity of motion and make themselves appear much more rigid and mechanical as Borg.
I'm going to guess it's the prosthetics that helped a lot with that, because they wore some heavy prosthetics.
Yeah.
They didn't dial it in. Nice touch was the Rhino Borg, which was interesting, which also made it a match for Rock Talk, as the Prakar. It meant that there was a physical match for her. So that was kind of good.
I wasn't sure what species that was, but it was nice to see a Borg that wasn't a simple, 6-foot humanoid.
Yeah. The credits just call it Rhino Borg.
That works.
Yep.
One thing they also didn't do was the echo voice, that Borg have had for we are Borg, echo,
Yeah.
But it was that there were more individual voices of the different Borg.
That's true. So in the end, Gwyn has to convince Zero that it's the risk we take by opening up to each other, revealing pieces of ourselves to each other, that what makes, life worth living. And, what he did to protect Gwyn was an act of love and not an act of hurt, to hurt her, and so on and so forth. So this is an important, for kids, there's an important lesson in there about, taking risks to help others and risks of love. And I thought that was a pretty good idea, is this idea that, love is a risk. So, in vulnerability.
By the way, we should probably mention what the Borg's plan is once they learn about all this. So they realize the diviner's weapon is really potent, and they refer to it as the living construct. Right. And I don't know exactly why, but because it doesn't appear to be biological. But it does change its shape and so forth, which is part of the reason that the kids have trouble figuring out how to deactivate it. But the Borg plan, now that they know about it, is we're going to assimilate the protostar, and that will let us assimilate the living construct, and then we will use it as a weapon to smash our enemies.
Yes. We've seen some of the diviners, people's technology, artificial life forms sort of stuff before. So it's interesting. Yeah. That's a construct.
Yeah. I'm also not sure how much of the diviner's technology is of his own people as much as it is just from the future.
Right.
Because I got the impression that Solemn was I don't know if it was pre-technological, but he is from the future. So it may not just be that this is alien tech, but this is future alien tech.
Right. True. So we get the solution to getting Zero out of the collective is, resistance is not futile because Zero is already part of a stronger collective, and togetherness wins again, which is a little bit of discovery creeping in.
and by the way, they have to talk. It's a talking solution. because once again, the transporter on the ship is conveniently offline.
Right.
And
broken.
Yeah. Or interfered with by Borg dampers or something, but it's offline again. So we have our talking solution. And then when Zero breaks free of the collective, he like releases this wave that causes it's a big, impressive special effect wave that causes all of the Borg to fall over and go unconscious. And at first I'm like, is this part of his Medusan thing or what? I mean, it's visual. What is going on here? And he says he put them back in their dormant state. So that would suggest it was a mental signal through the Borg collective that was like a Borg techno lullaby. In which case we shouldn't have really seen this big visual wave. They were just doing that to make it look visually impressive for children, I guess.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't be subtle with kids. You have to be of a clear indicator.
Oh, I think if all the Borg suddenly their eyes close and they fall over, the kids will get the idea they just went to sleep.
I guess so. And this is about this is the vinculum, by the way. I don't think we said that. This is the vinculum at the heart of the cube. That's sort of the central node for the cube. And so this is when they've figured out that Borg can't deactivate or remove the virus either. And then the kids decide, well, if we're that dangerous to Starfleet, we can't go to Starfleet, but we can still do good. And we're going to run around in our hopped up starship and do good stuff.
How about stay close to Federation space, go find another starship and take that one to Federation space and then tell them about where the protostar is and what's wrong with it and let the professionals deal with it.
Right. You mean like using the shuttle replicator that they have in one of their bays and, fly out in the shuttle?
Yeah. Could you construct a shuttle without infecting it? I would hope. I would think maybe.
I assume so.
Yeah.
You think of these things when you're an adult. Or emergency command hologram program.
Maybe that too.
Yeah, but you wouldn't have the chase throughout the rest of the season / series. So
yeah, I'm curious where they're going with this, because you can't have like get back to Starfleet and Starfleet puts them in command of the protostar, right? So, but this series is not called Protostar, it's called Prodigy. So maybe they, I'm just kind of, whatever, trying to think of how the future of the series, what they could do. And maybe it's they go off on adventures in Starfleet apart from the protostar, or on the protostar when the crew gets back, or something along those lines. But
they could become another lower decks type thing, but not as, obviously not as humorous,
comedic. Yeah.
Where they're now the ensigns in the lower decks or whatever.
And maybe they need them to go back to that part of the galaxy to help, solve a problem or whatever.
Space Academy. I remember that show from the 70s.
Remember when Wesley
had James Doohan in it?
Oh, that's right. By the way,
and Dr. what's his name from Lost in Space?
Dr. Smith?
Dr. Smith was in it, yes.
Oh. So I was going to say, you remember when Wesley was the acting ensign on the Enterprise? Yeah. Now imagine 4 or 5 of them.
Yeah. Much less annoying, though.
Much less annoying, I hope. So that's it for that episode. Any last thoughts on Let Sleeping Borg Lie, Father Cory?
There was the issue, of course, of it being a weapon from the future, but yet the Borg know about it. But again, that's neither here nor there. It's a kid's show, and they're not going to go that deep. I did like the line about, what the Borg never assimilated a turbo lift.
Yeah, that was a nice line. I assumed that that they just deduced all this stuff about the future weapon, that they didn't previously know about it.
Right.
Yeah. Anything else? Nope. Jimmy?
One thing we might want to mention, because it may have a hook into the beginning of next episode, although not necessarily, is at the very end on the protostar, the kids receive a distress signal. And they're leaping into action to go investigate that when we cut over to biological Janeway's ship. So they may pick up on that, but Doctor Who has taught me they don't always pick up on those things, because at the end of the season for the first season of the 11th Doctor, Matt Smith, he gets a phone call about a problem in ancient Egypt, and he and Amy and Rory are now leaping into action to go deal with that. And when we come back next season, they never even mention it. It's like they've just already dealt with that, and we never get to see that adventure. Thank you so much.
Hopefully they won't do that to us this time. All right. So I mentioned we had some feedback, and I want to get to that now. This was feedback on our discussion of the season finale of Lower Decks, called The Stars at Night. Doc Sweeney on our Discord community says, regarding the naming of weapons after saints, there's a great book put together by Father Dwight Longnecker called Stronger Than Steel. That's basically a compilation of letters that French soldiers in World War I wrote to the convent at Lisieux as support for the canonization of Saint Therese, detailing miraculous interventions of Therese on the battlefield. In addition to several crazy stories, including apparitions, several reported naming their big guns, I think artillery is what he means, after her, and having surprisingly low casualties to their unit. It gave me a good chuckle, but also makes me feel like Rambo praying my little Therese chaplet.
They also should name an anti-aircraft, anti-missile system as the Padre Pio defense system then, because he was reportedly seen by Allied flyers levitating and stopping them from dropping their bombs on his portion of Italy.
That's right. That's a good story. It was giving names to the guns, and including saints' names, was a common practice actually in France, like the historically Catholic countries. So, yep. This was in response to our discussion of the USS Corpus Christi ship, and I was talking about this USS City of Corpus Christi submarine. Then our next comment comes from Robert Willows on YouTube, who writes, I think Starship computers should have Jimmy Akin's personality to look at things with a faith and reason perspective for missions and such for humanoid kind. So,
well, thank you, but then I wouldn't get to go.
We should have Jimmy on board as the ship's theologian and philosopher. I think all ships should have a ship's philosopher
and chaplain. Catholic
and chaplain. Yeah, see, I'm wearing my Secrets of Star Trek T-shirt for those who are watching the video, and you can see, this is Jimmy and Father Cory and me hanging on the back, which you can get your shirt at sqpn.com/merch. All right, so let's wrap things up there. We want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Trek, including Father Eric T, Elizabeth E, Kathy L, Linda N, and Janet M. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Trek in all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. We'd love to hear what you think of Let Sleeping Borg Lie. You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek, our Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, an email to trek@sqpn.com, or visit our Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. We'll be back next time, and we'll be discussing the next episode of Star Trek Prodigy, All the World's a Stage. Until then, Jimmy Akin, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Star Trek.
Thank you. Live long and prosper, and maximum warp me.
Father Cory Sticha, thank you as well.
Thank you, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And remember, resistance is not futile.